This is Ari Koretsky, and welcome to Jews You Should Know, introducing the broader community to interesting and inspiring Jewish men and women making a difference in our world. Some are already famous, some not yet so, but each is a Jew you should know.
We are back with another fabulous episode of Jews You Should Know. I love meeting people like Mendy Reinder, today's guest, who, it can be said, has literally, directly and indirectly, been responsible for saving so many lives. Through his organization, Renewal, which is not something that he created when he was just starting out his career. He had a successful business career and pivoted in order to be able to take on this life-saving work. Renewal facilitates live kidney transplants in a very transparent and fully sanctioned, medically safe and integrated fashion. And he really came to address a major need in the community, which was a tremendous lack of available kidneys, people languishing for years on dialysis, and sadly passing away from terrible ailments that could potentially be remediated by donation. There was also for many years a very unsafe and extortionist black market that this organization, Renewal, has nearly put out of business. So it's very, very exciting work. Renewal also does a tremendous amount of education and outreach, helping people understand what kidney donation is all about, how and why it is safe, and a tremendous opportunity for people to be involved with. A reminder is always to follow us on social media at Jews You Should Know, spelled out fully, on Instagram and Facebook, Jews You Should Know with the letter U on Twitter. Send us emails, comments, suggestions, and sponsorships at jewsyoushouldknow@gmail.com. Subscribe wherever you may be listening, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so forth, and let others know to do so as well. And now, to our conversation with Renewal founder, Mendy Reinder. We are here with Mendy Reinder, founder of Renewal, an incredible organization that has been responsible for saving so many lives. Really excited to have you with us today. Mendy, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, hi. Thank you, Bari. Nice meeting you here.
Thank you, and I'm so happy to have you on. We did have some technical issues getting this going, but nothing more difficult than a kidney transplant. So if you can handle those, I think we can handle this as well.
Actually, for me, the technical part is harder than the kidney transplant.
I guess it all depends on the perspective, where you're coming from, what you're used to. Anyway, Mendy, again, great to have you here. Our listeners can't see you, but you definitely have a very Jewish look. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you're from. And for those less familiar with the community that you are from, give us a little bit of flavor, some color to that very rich Jewish background that you have.
So I was born and grew up in Borough Park and still live in Borough Park. Actually, these days I live a bit on the outskirts of Borough Park, which is still considered the last fort of Borough Park, because Borough Park has turned a lot more Hasidish than when I grew up in Borough Park. Borough Park, I don't think many of you viewers are not familiar with. If anything, everybody knows someone or something in Borough Park. And yeah, I love it, and it's a great place to be. And the community is beautiful, probably one of the largest Jewish communities in the world. And learned in, Spinke Cheder in Borough Park, and then traveled to Israel and learned in the Erlo Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. And then we learned in Katamon.
So going to Spinke Cheder, does that mean your family is Spinke Hasidim?
No. Spinke Cheder is more of a, at least at the time that I went to Spinke Cheder, was definitely more of a broad general mix. You had Hasidim, you had some Litvische kids, and from all walks of life. Now it's a lot more Hasidish, just because of the landscaping of Borough Park. But no, Spinke's was a very a beautiful mix from all different backgrounds, all different Hasidim, and people who just didn't really belong to any specific Hasidus, but they happened to have been Hasidish. That's the Spinke Cheder.
And is that your family background as well? More of a generic Hasidic family as opposed to a specific sect?
So the background of my family is not Hasidic. The background of my family is Hungarian Oberländer. It's more of the Chassam Sofer kind of people. They don't make these people. They lost the mold for that type of people. So either
Weissmandel was like the last.
correct. So the shul where I davened in the Nitzer Shul in Borough Park. Nitzer Shul in Borough Park. Davened Ashkenaz. We put on Tefillin Chalamoid. It's also something that's not in Borough Park nearly does not exist anymore. And the kids from our parents from the shul either became Hasidish or they became Litvish and moved to Lakewood. So the Hasidic Chevra stayed in Borough Park and the Litvish are in Lakewood. When you hear the Heimish Litvish, that's where it comes from.
A different dialect of Yiddish.
Correct.
So now the Overland has this very distinct culture that I believe is not really so much in vogue anymore, not really much around. What can you tell us a little bit about how unique that culture was, what some of its defining qualities were?
Very, very tough on sticking to tradition. In one sentence that I can put it. I remember in shul, whether it's a minhag, if you should make the mishaberach before the aliyah or after the aliyah, there would be lots of arguments in terms of Torah and tradition as to how it's done and how they did it in the past.
So very similar to German Jews in that regard.
Correct. The Chassam Sofer was a very strong fighter in terms of, it's keeping to the Masorah. At that time there was new waves, and whether it's the neologue, and that's basically what trickled down to where we are today. And learning in Eretz Yisrael, the yeshiva that I learned in is called Ohel Shimon Erloi. It's in Katma, Yerushalayim. The Erloi Rov was a fifth generation grandchild, Ben Achaben of the Chassam Sofer. And he as well is very, very strong and strict to the Chassam Sofer traditions. And so this is where I grew up in. I'm not an expert in history though.
Yeah, just asking from your personal vantage point, I mean, does that style really exist anymore, or is it really kind of fizzled out?
It's trickled out, but you definitely have new flavor to it. I mean, it's you always get new flavor in different communities, and you get the beauty of the Hasidic community as well. So, if you have a nice Hasidic community and it has the flavor, it has the Masorah of the Chassam Sofer, you get the best of both worlds.
So what do you really love about living in this enclave of Borough Park, on the outskirts at least? And by the way, what's considered the outskirts these days?
Well, 60th Street, I don't know if you're familiar with Borough Park, but 60th Street used to be the wide, it still is the wide street, and people would not cross over 60th Street. So at this point, and past 18th Avenue would have been the so-called borders. At this point, people are living as far as 64th, 65th, and 23rd Avenue. And it's more of the younger crowd who didn't end up in Lakewood and don't really belong to any specific Hasidus that they're committed to on a daily basis. And, it's more of a local shtibel community that, not to say there's a lot of people that belong to different Hasidus, but it's a lot of local activity. Local shuls, local minyanim, local shirim, everything is on a local basis, and it's its own little community within a community.
Is it just more affordable that the main part of Borough Park is too expensive now?
Correct. It's probably 5% cheaper or 10% cheaper than the housing in Borough Park, but it used to be a lot less. But at this point, it's become a community of its own, and it's not that much cheaper anymore.
It's interesting. I'm always hearing about how those areas might be shrinking because of expense and the flight to greater space. But you're saying that's not necessarily the case.
Yes and no, because Borough Park is definitely struggling with the Lakewood phenomenon, where people are leaving to Lakewood, and as well as Muncie. So, and there it's a lot cheaper. So you're looking at 50% or even more of discounted pricing between Borough Park and Lakewood.
Why have you chosen to stick it out?
Quite frankly, my parents are here. My in-laws lived here, and all of my brothers and sisters live in Borough Park. And it just so happened to have been. Borough Park changed. I'm married for close to 25 years, so Borough Park changed over this time as well. And am I committed to staying in Borough Park? I'm not committed to anything. Borough Park is beautiful for as long as it serves my needs. And if my children end up in Lakewood, Lakewood would be open play for me.
How about Silver Spring, Mendy? We'd love to welcome you down here.
Well, if I have to come to Silver Spring, then I think I need to have a Rabbanus position. If you have something open,
We'll see what we can do for you, Mendy.
seriously kidding on that. Don't even.
Yeah, I don't think we quite have the clientele that you would need yet, but maybe, Mendy, if you came, I think they might follow. So we could see what we could do there. But in any event, you spent this time in Israel in Katamon, which is surprising because you don't think of Katamon as an enclave of Oberland or Spinka or any more right-wing type of community. It seems to be more of a modern Orthodox area if you see the show Srugim and things of that nature. What was that experience like, and how long did you spend there?
So I was there for 2 years, actually 2.5 years. I developed a very close relationship to the Erlo. And actually the story of Renewal ultimately bounces back to my connection to Erloi. When I came back to the States and the Erlo Rov would come to the States for any visit whatsoever, I basically would close my office and be with him the entire time. And, there's once a time where a gentleman came in to the waiting room, and I happened to have been sitting there, and he looked a little drunk. His eyes were swollen, and his face was, eyes were red, face was swollen, and he was wobbly a bit. And he starts talking to me, and he says, I had a grocery, a supermarket, and I had to give it up. I'm going to have a job. I have 5 children, so I took $40 out of my pocket, and I thought, we'll get rid of it. And he's like, junger Mann, ich darf nicht dein Geld, just here is my Maisa. I don't need your money, just listen to my story. And he goes on saying that he's in kidney failure, and he lost his parnasa because he's on dialysis 3 times a week. But this all happened when Erlorov came to visit. So he came for a bracha to Erlorov, and I happened to have been there at that time. And I said to him, look, and he starts going on that it costs about $200,000 to buy a kidney on the black market. So I said, look, I don't have that kind of money, but I promise, let me go home, let me discuss it with my wife, and let's see what I can come up with for you. And, we discussed it, and we came up with the concept of placing ads in a local paper advertising the need of a kidney. And we placed an ad, father of 5, blood type O, needs a kidney, and I put my phone number. And quite frankly, I thought that would be the end story, where I did what I promised, I'll see what I can do, and that's where it ended. And lo and behold, 20 to 30 people called saying that I'm willing to donate a kidney, or what does it take to donate a kidney, or who are you? Can you help my mother or daughter or friend find a kidney? So I knew that there is a need because I met the need face to face, but I also realized that there is some sort of a possible solution to help those in need. And it was quite a journey because I'm in the real estate, or I did real estate at that time.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what was your office? You said you closed your office to meet the rabbi. What was your office when you came back?
I did real estate development.
Commercial or?
Commercial real estate development mainly. So developing and going into the trenches with organizations was not my area of expertise, and I really wasn't interested in doing it. So I went from many organizations, one organization to the next, offering the idea that people are going to donate a kidney from placing ads in papers. And I went to pretty big organizations, very well recognized organizations, and with the best intentions, they showed me the door very quickly. They said, you're crazy. Nobody's going to donate a kidney from ad in the paper. It doesn't sound right.
Didn't you have proof of concept? Hadn't you shown that people were calling and offering?
Yeah, but I wasn't that organized either. So I didn't come with spreadsheets and statistics and all kinds of stuff. But I did come and offer that I'll fund the first 3 years of the costs of running this concept, and if it works out. But they really didn't take it. They really were not interested in taking the idea. And there is a gentleman, I'm not sure if the listeners are familiar with, there's a gentleman by the name of Shlomo Meyer. Shlomo Meyer was very involved in Chai Lifeline for years. We're talking from the founders of Chai Lifeline. And I met him and I said, Shlomo, I have this great idea, but I can't seem to find someone who's going to make it happen. And he was like, well, I have a cousin or a nephew. I'm not sure if you know what the relationship is. Definitely a family relationship. His name is Sandy Ornstein. Sandy is an accountant by trade, but Sandy has been involved in creating mental health referral organizations, and Shuki Berman is part of his work, and there was a home for abused children as well that he was involved. So he's like, speak to him. I'm sure he'll be able to help you. And I reached out to Sandy, and Sandy, again, now the way Sandy says that he was in the car with his wife, and when I called him, and he says, I hung up the phone and I told my wife, you hear this crazy guy just called me saying that he wants to start an organization where people are going to donate kidneys from ads in the paper. And he's like, there's no way that this is going to happen. This guy's nuts. But I was pretty persistent because I really felt it could happen. I really felt that people will do it. And I kept on calling him. He kept on pushing me off that he doesn't have anyone to get involved and he doesn't have the time for it. Probably a year or two later, he called me saying, you know, all this time that I've been calling him, he calls me and says that he's involved in this organization, DARCA. DARCA is was a home for, as I said, abused girls. And the gentleman that's running DARCA is available to have a couple of hours a day to work on this brilliant idea. And this is where Chaim Steinmetz came into the picture. Chaim Steinmetz is still today the director of Renewal. This goes back to 2006. So in 2006, we started Renewal, and December of 2006 was our first transplant.
Okay, so I want to stop you there and just go back a drop and understand the landscape of organ donation in general at that time, and especially within the religious community, because, you know, you say it now, it doesn't sound like such a bizarre idea. Why were people so reticent, and why were they, you know, showing you the door politely or otherwise? Like, what was so radical about this concept?
There was a couple of misconceptions in our community. Renewal started as a Orthodox or ultra-Orthodox organization, being that we're in Borough Park. The concept of donating organs, whether it's a live organ donation or a deceased organ donation, cadaveric organ donation, was so controversial with all the misinformation and misinformation that has been going on for years in Eretz Yisrael. There were major fights in Eretz Yisrael where people were accusing the hospital system of harvesting organs of people that were dying, and the major fights that were going on.
The autopsy controversies and everything, yeah.
Correct, autopsies and all that. So the concept of live donation was never even brought to the forefront. At least this is what I think. And transplants was not something that the community was big at. Not to say no communities at that time were big in live donations. No communities are big today with live kidney donation, except for the ultra-Orthodox community. We're going to get to the statistics of it. Statistics are phenomenal. You're looking at, these days, roughly 25% of all altruistic transplants in the United States are done out of this office.
Oh my gosh.
So that shows you how little altruistic kidney donations there are in the United States. So you're looking at a community. Let's say at this point we get our kidneys from the Hasidic, modern Orthodox, Litvish communities, but we barely get kidneys from any other communities. I mean, here and there they'll trickle in, but in general, this is just a Haredi idea or a Haredi concept. We're 0.0025% of the population in the United States, but we're doing 25% of all altruistic transplants in the country. And it's a crazy number, and it just proves that with the right amount of education, the right amount of community connection, you can make a change.
It's a staggering number.
I never understood the concept of, you know, politicians always speaking about education, how important education is. I don't believe they're saying it because of that they're really interested in making a change. Or very few politicians, I believe, are interested in making a change. They're just interested in getting into office. But the truth is, education is key to many aspects of our lives. And to prove it, people are walking in. This week itself, we're having a handful of transplants. I mean, Monday we had 3 transplants in a day. it just proves that educating a community at a time, and we do this separately for each community. I mean, Rabbi Sturm is probably out many times during the year, whether it's Shabbatons or during the week, going around all over the country, speaking in different communities, and slowly but surely, the modern Orthodox community is fairly, Rabbi Sturm it does the outreach to the modern Orthodox community, and they're pretty much up there with the Hasidic community in terms of donation. You would think, the Hasidim are, if the Rebbe says it's okay, it's done. And the modern Orthodox community is very close to it. And yes, they need more literature and to read up about it. And yes, he knows what each community needs in order to educate themselves about kidney donation. And that happens.
In 2006, when you were starting, somebody was, God forbid, having these struggles. What would they do? What was their choices? What was their pathway?
Before Renewal, their choices were very limited. They had either, if they had an immediate family member that was a match, which does not happen that often, and they would also need a family member that would be willing to donate. And with the limited amount of education, kidney donation, organ donation sounds very, very scary. So even if you had a loving family member that, but they might have not been willing and able to donate, thinking that, they might not be able to live a normal life after donating a kidney. So that in itself was very challenging. Then there would be the black market. The black market was, you'd go out there and pay a broker $200,000-$300,000 or $200,000 for a kidney. And I always point out, at this point, I don't think there is much of a robust black market for kidneys, because this is what Renewal has done in the community, is to kind of kill that, because there is better options. But let's just go through the black market for a second. If you're a broker trying to make whatever cut you can make off that $200,000-$300,000, your interest is not in getting a good kidney for your customer. Your interest is just to make that transplant happen, whether it's good or not. And unfortunately, many, many people went all over the world, the third world countries, to buy that kidney, and they came back to, whether it's here or to whichever country they were from, and within a week or two or a month or two, that kidney failed because it was not a good kidney. So I always told people, don't touch the black market. I mean, these days you don't even have to say it, because I don't think there is a black market to reach out to, or at least none that we know of. But back then I would tell people, don't even waste your time with the black market, because it's only going to hurt you. Stay focused. Let's do the Renewal program, and that will help you get to where you need to be.
How would a black market even function? I mean, you show up at a hospital with a box and a kidney, it doesn't have to be official through channels with the hospital.
Correct. There was a case locally where there's a robust black market or so, but the hospital sometimes doesn't know that the person donating the kidney is coming out of the other country. They would say, well, we're related. This is my sister's wife from the Ukraine, or, whatever stories they came up with. And there's only a certain amount of investigation that a hospital can or is willing to do in order to figure that out. Coming to Renewal, one of our major strong points are that the donor and recipient don't know each other, and they don't meet each other till probably 6 months post-transplant, or at least till after transplant. And this goes on for many reasons. So because, number one, we are a smaller community. So if there's a donor, let's say from where you're coming from, and I need a kidney, and the donor is a perfect match to me, and suddenly I know who the donor is, and he's having second thoughts, I have the ability to reach out to the rabbi there, or to a friend, please do me a favor, go talk to that recipient, to the donor, and try to convince him to donate a kidney. Like this, we give the donor 100% of his space where he can decide, and we're constantly encouraging him to educate himself to the point where if he wants to walk away at any time, he can. And it happens here and there where the donor will come fairly close to transplant, and they'll say, you know what, I need more time to think about it. And that's exactly what's honored. Go ahead. And there's no hard feeling from the recipient, because he has no clue who he's dealing with.
So take me back to 2006. Again, you were kind of pestering these community leaders for a while, and finally they sort of put you in touch with some activists who could help actualize this vision, what did you actually start to do? Because again, you had made at this point, whatever happened to that original guy that you had met?
The original guy, his name was Eli Cohn. Not the familiar Eli Cohn.
Not the famous spy.
Not the famous spy, right. But Eli did not get a kidney in the first couple of years from Renewal. He eventually got a kidney through Renewal, but unfortunately died a couple of months thereafter from heart failure. And the problem, Eli was scared to go through this. As much as he was miserable on the dialysis, he was extremely petrified of going through a transplant. We'll discuss Eli in a minute. But in December of 2006, a young woman who got a kidney in the black market previously and failed, and eventually got a kidney from her father. That kidney failed because the kidney has a life of probably anywhere between 15 to 25 years on average, a live kidney. It's double of a deceased kidney, but it's also eventually the disease that hurt the first kidney eventually catches up with the second. And this young woman came to the States, and our first transplant, our kidney donor, Hamalta Berger, who for that reason serves on the board of Renewal, donated a kidney. And interesting with Hamalta, usually transplants are done laparoscopically with minimally invasive surgery with just 3-4 holes poked in the stomach. For him, he had his ribs were in the way, and they needed to cut away. They first did full open surgery, but they also cut 1.5 ribs in order to get the kidney out. And they told him 2 days before transplant that this is the only way that this can happen, and he still went ahead with it. The recovery of that is probably 10 times as hard as the recovery today, and just goes to show Mikam Chisrol of people of stepping up to the plate and doing the unheard of craziest steps in order to save another life. That's the beauty of Renewal, and I personally find the beauty of Renewal to be where people don't know who they're giving to. It's from a different walk of life, and many of these people, I mean, there's a beautiful story over the years with about 700, a little over 700 transplants. You get every story in and of itself is a beautiful story, but the beauty of Renewal is where you get people from different walks of life that don't know each other. People that would never sit down to the same table maybe and eat your shchita or your hashgacha or this kashrus or any, davening in the shul. I would never walk into a Litvische place, a Chassidische place, and suddenly all of those barriers come down because all they see is a human that's struggling, and I have something that I can deliver and help that other person live. I'm not sure if I have the facts correctly. It's been a while, but if you remember in 2014, the 3 boys that were kidnapped in Israel. So there was a gentleman that called Renewal saying he's wants to donate a kidney, and he was like, "How did you hear of Renewal?" And he's like, "Look, on my shul there was a sign hanging on the door that they're looking for a local person in Lakewood. He lives in Lakewood. He's he's in his late 50s, and he says the reason he's looking to donate because he spoke to a friend of his that lives in Ramat in Bet Shemesh, and he says that while he was on the phone, the friend started crying that the 3 boys were found murdered. And he repeats it saying, so I asked this friend of mine in Bet Shemesh, why are you crying? You knew any of them? And the friend said, I'm shocked that you're even asking such a question, that I need to know someone, a fellow Yid in order to cry for the pain of three lost souls. And he hung up the phone with that friend and he said, my Ahavas Yisrael is missing. I want to fix my Ahavas Yisrael. And he called Renewal saying that I want to donate a kidney. So that person, we told him we found the kidney for, but there's another person living in a different community, so to speak. He's not from, that's looking for a kidney. And he was like, I don't know. Then he says, 1 minute. The reason I'm calling is because I need to fix my Ahavas Yisrael. I don't care who that person is, and I want to donate to the person to overcome the missing part. And he went ahead and donated a kidney to this person that would never, ever cross his path. And I find that that's the beauty of renewal. I don't know where you grew up, but my parents would literally cry when there was a painful story, no matter where in the world. If there was a painful story, they would feel it, and we would feel it at home. And I feel as we grew up, it became more commercialized. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot more pain out there. There's a lot of pain out there, and it brings back beautiful memories for me where we are still one small family.
So how did this thing start to grow? You started reaching out to the community, putting ads in the paper. What did you do?
Correct. So basically, we went ahead with those model that we had, ads in the paper. People reached out, and we started with one hospital, Montefiore Medical Center. And the first year we did one transplant. Obviously, the transplant was December of 06. But the following year, we did a handful of transplants. And the year thereafter was 12 transplants. And as we moved along, at this point, like 2020 is not going to be the greatest year just because transplant centers were closed for 6 months. But we're on target for about 120, 130 transplants. And this is all, we're not that much in placing ads in papers. We're more into asking recipients to open doors for us. So we create the evenings where they'll bring friends and family together and we'll explain the process, or we'll do community drives where 100, 200 people. This week, Thursday, we have a kidney drive in Monroe. Probably going to net at least 150 to 200 people are going to test in order to see if they're a potential match. In Lakewood, the last couple of weeks, we had 2-3 drives where we netted probably 300 swabs, where people swabbed to see if they're, to figure out their blood types and the HLA. So it moved in a different way. It's not so much that Renewal finds kidneys for people. Renewal helps you educate your community. Renewal helps you educate your friends and family, and we take it from there. We make sure that the recipient and the donor, the recipient does not know which family member or any family member or at all. And many times it works out that we have a kidney that matches that particular recipient, and the kidney that's coming from this particular drive for that particular recipient doesn't even come to this recipient. It ends up going to someone else or a different community.
So speaking of education, give me kind of like a basic primer on why does somebody need a kidney? What's the circumstances? How common is it? What are the shortages?
There are millions of people living in kidney failure in the United States. There's probably 400,000 or 500,000 people living on dialysis. There is about 100,000 people on the waiting list for transplant. And the national average is about 7 years for a kidney. Just so you understand the statistics of the life expectancy of people on dialysis, 25% of people on dialysis die each year. 60% are no longer alive after 3 years, and 80% are no longer alive after 10 years. So it is a slow and painful death. The dialysis only does roughly 15% of what a healthy kidney does. So it's not like dialysis is a solution. Dialysis is only a temporary hold if we can get to the transplant early enough before the person gets sick. Just like going back to Ellie Cohen, Ellie waited way too long and he lost heart function. So by the time he went to transplant, one hospital was not interested in transplanting him because they felt that his heart is no longer viable and they weren't comfortable doing the transplant. And another hospital felt that the hospital that ultimately transplanted him, that with a new kidney, his heart function might go back from 30 to 50%, and that'll, with proper intervention, will be able to survive. But obviously, unfortunately, it didn't survive. So the sooner someone is transplanted, these days we're getting a lot of people that the day their doctor tells them that you're in kidney failure, they start the process, they understand the process, and that's pretty much very important because doctors, we find, are not giving the people the proper education in terms of getting to transplant. They'll tell them you're in kidney failure. They don't have the resources to walk them through the process or tell them what it is. Yeah, you don't need a kidney yet, and most people, that's what they want to hear, that they don't need it yet. It's down the line. And when you wait till down the line, you're on dialysis. So the best thing is for a person to start the process as soon as possible And this is all where education and renewal comes in, where the more people know about renewal, that the quicker they'll reach out to renewal, the quicker they'll get transplanted. The sooner you start rolling the ball, the sooner the game is over.
So, what are the things that people need to know about prospectively becoming a donor? Obviously, people, I'm sure, are concerned about safety and their own long-term medical prognosis and what the process is like, what the recovery is like. How does that all work?
Just so you understand, it's a fairly very safe procedure. The mortality rate is 3 in 10,000. So just so the listeners can put things in perspective, the mortality rate for a hernia surgery is about 1 in 2,500. Because ultimately, kidney donation is taken from a very healthy pool of people, and people that have a hernia repair might not be perfectly healthy. They might have other issues, but they're still doing the surgery. So that in itself, but the safety-wise, when someone comes to shul tomorrow and tells you that he's having a hernia repair that day, you'll say, okay, I'll say a kapitel Tehillim for you, and I'll see you there at the end of the week. It's not something that we kind of go crazy over. Kidney donation is is an extremely safe procedure. The donor goes through vigorous tests, very rigorous tests. With their own, the donor has its own team at the transplant center that advocates for the donor's health. So obviously, the donor and recipient are separate, and they have their own advocacy. And it's more or less a swab to find out if you're a match. That's something that we do in-house. And we can figure that out probably to 95, 97% accuracy. There's a full day of testing. In the past, before renewal, it would have been a 4 or 5 day process where you'd come in one day to meet the social worker, and then they'd make you come back to meet the doctor, and then they'd make you come back for a EKG and some blood work, and the following day they'd make you come back for a sonogram. It used to be a 4-day spiel, and it's very hard for someone that has a job or other commitments to come back and forth this many times. But with renewal, we kind of worked out with most centers that we work with that they squeeze all of it into one day. So the donor basically knows within a day, one day of work, 1 day of testing, or maybe 1.5 day worth of testing, whether he can go forward or not. And the actual procedure is probably a 2-hour surgery for the donor. It's a day to 2 days in the hospital. And probably, I would say, on the easier side, for those that recover easier, it's probably 5 days for recovery, 5 to 7 days recovery. And there are people that go out as much as 6 to 8 weeks, depending also what type of work they do. If the person has a desk job and they don't do much physical work, it's a quicker recovery. And for the people that do physical work, it's a longer recovery. In terms of life changes, there isn't much life changes that happen. They don't want you to do contact sports, motorcycles, and any of those things that you're prone to injuring your kidney that's left with you. And it's also important to know that 1 in 800 people are born with only one kidney. And they go through life many times not knowing that they have one kidney unless they're looking to donate a kidney, and then they find out. We've had that cases once in a while. We bump into those that have only one kidney.
So the long-term medical prognosis for the donor, it doesn't alter life expectancy.
It's very interesting, but again, it's a bit of a cheat, but it's a fun fact. Kidney donors statistically live longer than the average population. Now, if you ask a Chassidish Rebbe, he'll say, listen, the guy who gives life deserves a little extra bonus. But statistically, they're taking it from a very healthy pool of people. So they take a kidney from a 40, 50-year-old, 60-year-old that's healthy. Obviously, that group is going to live longer. Your blood pressure probably goes up with 5% post-transplant, but these are all within safe and extremely safe guidelines. They want you to stay away from Advil. For those that are need the Advil to stay sane, shouldn't be donating. And what's beautiful is we created a whole new group of people that are just, I don't even know what to call them. Heroes is an understatement. And we do events here and there where we bring hundreds of kidney donors in the same room. If I need someone to say Tehillim for either myself or any emergencies that's the group of people who I want to do the shtadlonos for me, to go out there and pray for us. It's just beautiful for someone. We know the Akedah. Rabbi Yehuman Eisenberg once told Chaim Altenberger the morning of surgery, he says, say the Parshas Akedah, because he doesn't see anything else that comes close to it, like kidney donation, like organ donation.
So no contact sports, though, for someone who's had it, but otherwise...
Otherwise, they've gone more very... And there was also a misconception within our community whether women can have children. So all of those things where you had no one to ask that question, you didn't even put kidney donation on the radar, because you probably can't have children, which is totally not true. But here you have the resources to ask the questions, find out if it's for you, and donate. And also you had a lot of family opposition. Before Renewal, if a child came and told the parents that they're looking to donate, the parents would be adamantly against it. At this point, it's something that happens a lot. Everybody knows someone that donated a kidney, and they're seeing them in shul. It's become an accepted thing to happen, and that in and of itself creates the ease where family members don't go ballistic if a close relative is looking to donate, and it's respected.
Medically, do they have theories as to why we have this extra kidney? Like, why would we need two kidneys?
I don't have the answer, but there was a question posed to Rav Chaim Kanievsky about it, and he said, look, probably to give one away.
For chesed purposes. Yeah.
I'm going to just finish with a very personal story. Running an organization, you have many, many stories, and every story in and of itself is a very beautiful story. And, most of the times it's taking a person from pain to life. And, I'm glad that I'm able to have, that I have the chus to be involved in this organization. There was a young woman from Yerushalayim. Her name is Molly Pump. Molly is 27 years old. She had a 7-year-old girl at the time. She was in kidney failure ever since she gave birth to her daughter, and then she was on dialysis. She met our first recipient at Hadassah in the dialysis ward. That recipient came around, the original recipient, the first recipient from Renewal, came around to Hadassah to always meet people on the machine and give them chizuk. This Molly was on the machine for 8 months there. And Molly says, I don't have a donor. My husband is not a match. He's willing to donate to me, but he's not a match. And she's like, and in Israel at that time, the system was broken. It's still not perfect, but we started, I don't know if you're familiar, I was very involved with Rabbi Haber in Israel from Matnas Chaim to help him copy the model.
I heard about his thing. Wasn't he arrested and there was a whole scandal over there?
Correct. And he was eventually released and charges were dropped. And his organization there made a major dent in the kidney shortage in the country. So I was very involved with him when he set up the organization. So, but at that time there was no Matnas Chaim in Israel either. So this woman tells Molly, call Renewal because they might be able to help you. She called Renewal. She set herself up. She sent in her blood work and everything else. 8 weeks after she arrived to New York, she was transplanted. And she got her kidney from a roofer, someone who worked for a roofer in Borough Park, Fishy Carmel. These people never met them. Fishy actually never wanted to meet her. His condition was that he doesn't want to meet her. So Molly, the last day of dialysis, I went to visit her here locally in Brooklyn, and she was penning a letter to her donor while she was on the machine, and she addressed it Lahamalach Shali, to my angel. And she writes how her life has been affected from with dialysis, and how miserable life is on dialysis, and how she so much looks forward to life once she gets her gift. And the last line of that letter, she writes, maybe with this gift that you'll give me, I'll be able to answer my daughter's request every single Friday night when I light candles to bring her brother or sister. And I gave it to Fishy the morning of transplant at Columbia Presbyterian, and as he's reading it, the tzaddik was crying, reading that letter. But he still had no interest in meeting her, and we kept the two of them very, very separate. Now, while she was recovering, Molly, by the way, stayed in my house all this time. So after she finished surgery, the surgery was Purim time, and as we're going into Pesach, she needed to stay here for all this time to continue follow-up visits with the doctor. And I walk into the house once, and she's climbing on my kitchen cabinets cleaning for Pesach. And I'm like, Molly, we have cleaning help. What are you doing? She tells me, Mendy, you don't understand. Ich lebe. I'm alive. You don't understand it. So the 7-year-old, we called her Pampala, her daughter. I'm on the board of Beis Yaakov of Borough Park. So Pampala got into Beis Yaakov all this time that she did. She was there in first grade. And every morning, the ones that have little kids at home are pretty familiar with this. You chase the kids out, you get the bus by the skin of our teeth. And I'm getting my kids, and Molly is getting Pampala out the door. And Pampala is running out with her coat, not wearing her coat. And Molly yells to Pampala, Pampala. She also started calling her Pampala. Pampala, you're not cold? Bist nicht kalt? And the 7-year-old turns to her mother. I'm watching this in front of me as she's running off to the bus. As long as my mother is healthy, I'm warm. And off like that, she ran to the bus. And I turned around and I said, it's not only the recipient that changes the life of a recipient. The 7-year-old kid realizes that there is a whole life ahead. And Baruch Hashem, Molly went back home. Pampala has a new sister and a new brother. And Mika Amchi Yisrael, Renewal. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, and I'm glad that I'm able to be part of it. And I thank you for showing interest in our wonderful work.
Thank you so much, Mendy. Where can people learn more about Renewal and they want to donate either financially or kidney or whatever it might be?
You can find us a lot of information at renewal.org.
Do you have 2 donate buttons in your case? Or
They say, Rav Pam once said, had a blood transfusion. So he says, now he understands what we say. We always understood it to financial gifts. But he says, now I understand that Matnas Basar V'Dam is literally flesh and blood. And Hashem should help. We should all only be on the giving side and never need to be on the receiving end, both financially and flesh and blood.
Amen. Mendy Reinder, founder of Renewal. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Rabbi Ari.
This has been Ari Koretsky on Jews You Should Know. Please visit us at JewsYouShouldKnow.com and subscribe at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you consume podcasts. Find us on social media at Jews You Should Know. If you'd like to become a supporter of this podcast, we would greatly appreciate that, and you can do so by visiting patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Jews You Should Know. Finally, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review so that we can continue to grow and introduce many more people to Jews You Should Know.